everyone, welcome to another commentary podcast. I am Captain Logan.
I'm Dan.
Today, we are tackling something that we have been planning for 2 years. We are finally going to do a commentary podcast for the Spawn film. Dan and I wanted to wait to knock this out until we finally finished Spawn Year. And like I said, this was in my plans from the very beginning of Spawn Year. I thought when we got done with it would be really fun if the co-creators of Spawn Year sat down and did a commentary on the Spawn movie. Before we get started, I want to talk a little bit about Spawn Year and Dan's involvement with it. Dan knows very little, next to nothing about Spawn, besides what he's seen in Spawn Year. And when we co-created Spawn Year together, it wasn't because we both knew anything about Spawn, it was because I was kind of making fun of Spawn one night. And Dan, if you haven't heard this story, and Dan said, hey, you know that whole thing with Tick Month? What if you did like a Spawn Year? And that really is the genesis of Spawn Year. We laughed at it as a joke, and then we started talking about it and realized it could make a cool series, and then it spiraled totally out of control. It became the crazy monster it is now. Spawn Year, of course, is now completely finished, and you can watch all 365 episodes, the epilogue, the prologue. I start with prologue, and then you can watch the epilogue afterwards. If you haven't seen any of Spawn Year, Dan plays himself, but he plays a mad scientist version of himself who cloned Vince and created my arch nemesis Dooms Vince. And so anyway, today we're gonna watch and talk about the Spawn movie. Now, Dan originally was going to not watch this, and our plan was to watch it together, and he would see it for the very first time. But we decided this would probably go a little bit better if he had seen it before. We could actually discuss the film a bit instead of his just getting it as we go along, because it's going to be, I think, a little bit more coherent and more fun. So, Dan, you just saw the movie.
I did. It doesn't make any sense. I'm probably going to find that it makes less sense on a second viewing. So
I guess we'll see it. And of course, the weird thing is that it worked a lot better for me after I started reading a lot of Spawn.
Oh man, like me and Cap were talking about this earlier because I needed to talk to him about this movie because I just didn't know if I missed like the motivations of every character in the movie, and like people were actually behaving in like rational ways. But the answer to my question was no, like that's not in the movie. So I had the right to be just as confused as I was on the first viewing, and I'm sure that I'll notice even more nonsensical actions as I view it a second time. Man, like this is a quagmire, man. I can't imagine this making more sense than the Spawn comics.
It does, and imagine this kind of confusion, but more so, and for an entire year.
Wow. I can't believe I did that to you.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. But no, ultimately, I'm really happy with the way Spawn Year turned out.
Oh,
and
yeah,
I'm glad I went through it, and I'm detoxing really hard right now. So this is probably not good for me coming back to this. But Dan, you've now felt just a taste of my pain from Spawn Year. And we're gonna talk about this. Everybody that's seen this that was paying attention and realizes that it's really there's a lot of stuff that doesn't make sense in it. As I said, still felt really only a fraction of the madness I think that's in the Spawn book. Now, having said that, and we'll talk about it, there's stuff I like in this movie, and I was a lot more positive about it when I did my episode of Spawn Year, episode 100, if you want to go check that out, because, well, first of all, my standards were lower.
Yeah.
But also just because it's more concise and more compact, and we'll talk about this, but the premise just out on the outset makes a lot more sense for something like this than it does for a bloated, ongoing, never ends kind of comic book.
Right. I mean, I think I didn't know about Spawn before watching this movie other than what he looked like, and I thought he looked really cool. So, like, watching this movie and seeing the mythology of it made me kind of interested in checking out whatever it is that's good. Like, I'm going to interested in maybe checking out the Brian Wood run once it starts if it's any good, because the mythology is cool. It's just everything that exists within that mythology doesn't make sense.
Yep, exactly. Well, we'll talk about it. Everybody, go ahead and grab your copy of Spawn, whether you're watching it on DVD or Blu-ray or however you're watching it. Of course, we're watching the rated R air quotes director cut, and I honestly don't know if the old PG cut is even very readily available, but that is the version we're watching. Get everything rigged up to timestamp 0, get it past the menus and everything, and get ready to press your play button as soon as I say now. Dan, are you ready, sir?
I am.
Here we go. Let's watch some Spawn. Everybody press play right now.
New Line Cinema. Interesting. When did this movie get released?
This movie was released in 97, and
Okay.
that would have been a full 7 years after Ninja Turtles.
I was going to mention Ninja Turtles because it's interesting that New Line got two kind of popular independent comic book properties done, and one of them was really good, and this one wasn't.
Yeah, and also one of them was kind of slightly more underground, more B movie-ish effort, and this was very mainstream.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, you had some of the same special effects people working on this that worked on Jurassic Park.
Oh, of course. And Martin Sheen's kind of a dead giveaway. He's a pretty good actor.
Yeah, now it's not an all-star cast or anything, but like it's not like Martin Sheen is the only name. I mean, John Leguizamo, not like a huge major actor, but like people know him. You know what I mean? Like he's been in a lot of stuff.
Oh yeah,
He's a well-known
definitely.
character actor.
Um, I was really pleased to see Martin Sheen in this because he's a favorite actor of mine. Which now is one of my favorite movies. So at least seeing him was somewhat entertaining. And I like Michael Jai White a lot too. I feel like he doesn't get enough work for how good he is.
No, I think so too. I've really liked him in Arrow so far. What they've given him to do there, and he's had a better career than I thought he would. I'm glad that he's gotten some stuff to do since this.
I am a big fan of Dynamite, which is kind of a throwback to the blaxploitation films that he was in like '08, I think it came out, and it's
Yeah,
hilarious. I love that movie.
I've still never seen that.
You check it out if you
I
like,
should watch that.
Shaft or Superfly or stuff like that. It's good time.
I think he was absolutely right for this part. I think that he gives a pretty good performance. I mean, like, of course, the writing's not great, so he's got to work with what he's got, and he's not a real experienced actor here, and you can kind of tell a little bit. But like,
Uh-huh.
if he was given better material, I think that it might have elevated his performance a bit. You know what I mean? So I'm not saying that he's bad. It's just it does feel a little bit like, well, we would have loved like a big giant A-list kind of star, but we couldn't get that, so we got this guy. It has that feel a little bit.
What was he a martial artist before he got an acting gig? Was that
I
what he was
think I
doing?
think he was. I think he was. I'd have to look that up.
He seems like that. He's very good, hand-to-hand combat scene stuff.
Yep, yep. He was mostly a martial artist before this.
Cool, cool. I mean, from what I've seen of Al Simmons in the comics, he definitely looks the part too.
Oh yes, absolutely.
And
Uh,
this,
my
oh,
my first big criticism of this movie is just that for the material, it's being a comic movie and being this fantasy. It is not nearly stylized enough.
yeah, we'll get to later when we see some of the Spawn fights. I don't know, like you said some of the Jurassic Park people worked on this, so they must have had some kind of a pretty good budget. Why does Spawn like use guns in most of the fight scenes at the beginning? I just thought that was really strange. Like I felt like it would have been more stylized in the fighting and things like that.
That is a source material problem.
Oh, okay, okay.
The deal there is that Spawn uses a lot of guns. Uh, Al Simmons was you know, essentially a ballistics expert. I mean, like he was an assassin. He's brilliant at he's a brilliant shot. That's what he likes to do. But the idea is supposed to be that, and I think they kind of tell us this a little bit in this movie, but just like with the comics, you don't know what the rules are
Yeah.
enough. And the idea is supposed to be that if he uses his powers too much, then he'll deplete all of his powers, and Malbolgia will own him completely, and he'll go back to hell, and he won't get to be on Earth anymore. And
Oh.
so a spawn can, air quotes, die, kind of, and that's how they die, is they deplete their powers. That's why you had the spawn clock at the beginning of the Spawn comics.
Oh,
the,
okay, I
the
see.
idea is every time he uses his powers, the clock starts to deplete. The problem is they were always really loose with McFarlane was always really loose with that, and you just never knew really what the rules were, and it was always really convenient. So it's like, well, we can just prolong this forever. The Spawn Clock would have been a really good idea had it been a short piece, had it been like a 6-issue miniseries or something like that, where you can tell the story about what he did before the clock ran out, or
Right.
maybe like he somehow beats Malbolgia before the clock runs out. But like, immediately having a ticking clock like that is a good idea. It's a good way to get get a sense of urgency, right? But the problem is that when you don't know what the rules are and you just you just have it there as kind of a gimmick, then it actually doesn't give you that sense of urgency at all. It does the opposite.
Right. So does sulking in an alley deplete his power? Like when he just has the costume on, is his power depleted, or does he have to like use it?
As far as we can tell, it seems to be that he's got to actually use magic.
Okay.
So like he can have the costume on. Well, in fact, the costume is part of him now. I mean, like he's it's just like the Venom symbiote, where it's a living creature and he's bonded to it.
Okay.
So it actually would take power to not look like you're wearing the costume.
So it's kind of weird that he just doesn't have the mask on most of the time in this movie. Then, like that takes his power away. Like not that the rules are established that way in the movie, but like from the rules of
I
the comic books.
It's hard to know. I mean, it seems like the mask goes on and off kind of arbitrarily. By the way, this girl here, she's one of the three talking heads that's in a lot of issues, and that picture of the flag there looks a lot like a panel that's in the first issue. But anyway, so the when the mask goes on and off, that seems to for some reason not deplete his powers at all.
Uh huh.
And there's an inconsistency of whether or not the mask is a physical separate, I'm sorry, is a separate thing that he can like take off and put back on and is not actually connected to the costume at all. It's interesting that there are different places in the comics where sometimes it looks like a thing is actually part of the costume and sometimes it's not. Like way later, like really late in the, I want to say like even just 30 40 issues ago, it or maybe a little bit more than that, there's a thing about how the skulls connected to that chain in the front is actually somehow not part of the costume,
Oh, that's weird.
because it's just separated from it and just lying on the ground after Al Simmons is dead.
That's weird.
So yeah, they're just completely inconsistent about it. This right here with Jason Wynn and Clown is the one scene that I think is a little bit more comic booky, a little bit more stylized. I like that Clown is in silhouette here, that you don't really get to see what he looks like right away exactly, and just the way this is lit and stuff is a little bit more indicative of what I think the whole movie should have looked like. A little
Yeah.
bit. Although I would have used a lot of color filters and stuff to make it a little bit more, like I said, stylized. Just make it look a little bit less straight up regular mainstream movie. This needs this, and I know this is a couple of years before this movie, but it's too bad this movie didn't come after Blade, because Blade at the time was the most straight off the page comic book stylized kind of movie. It looked like they were looking at comic book panels and trying to translate them to the screen. For such a visual comic, I mean, Spawn is all about the look, because a lot of it doesn't make any sense. So its selling point is the visuals. It's really too bad that this is so mainstream looking.
Yeah, and that scene that you were mentioning about Clown and Jason Wynn, when the movie opened, I was kind of optimistic about how good it would be, because that talking head lady that you mentioned on the TV talks about a lot of political issues and has a perspective. I was like, oh, maybe this movie's going to have something to say about the United States' role in the world. And since Al Simmons is a government assassin, basically, they'll have some sort of commentary about that. But that's not really what the movie's about at all.
And that's how Spawn always gets you, man. It starts out with something that seems like it could really go somewhere. There's an intriguing concept at the outset. Sometimes even like dare I say, almost inspired way of making a scene happen and starting to tell a story, and then immediately just descends into a desert of lazy writing and inconsistent storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
And as I said, the movie is even less that way than the comic. Somehow, by having to truncate so much of this material together all at once, it's more digestible and a little bit easier to swallow. It's just you take out a lot of the extraneous bits, and you watch this and you can kind of see how, okay, well, if we just made this not so overblown, could have made it work. There is a brand new character that was not in the comics yet, Jessica Priest, and once there started to be a lawsuit thing with Liefeld, McFarlane decided to retcon the continuity with who killed Al Simmons in the first place, and it was no longer Chapel, now it was suddenly her.
She, I have to say, is probably one of the most comic book things in this movie. She's always dressed like a comic book action chick lady.
Yeah, it's just too bad they didn't shoot it more like that.
No. And I feel like Martin Sheen has a pretty good time playing this role. I think he's played bad guys before. Nothing comes to mind immediately off the top of my head that he's been in where he's played a bad guy, but I feel like he has before. But I don't know, like, the things I know him for, Apocalypse Now, obviously, and Amazing Spider-Man, where he plays Uncle Ben. It's a different thing than I've seen him in some of my favorite stuff. So it's cool to see him play a bad guy here.
Yeah, I think he mainly played villains in his early roles. Yeah. Right at the outset here, it feels like everybody is playing this as kind of a cartoon.
Uh-huh.
That they're not taking it too seriously. It's gonna be a violent action fest. The initial tone is like, this is a silly romp and all the characters inside of it are taking it seriously, and everything just seems like normal and natural to them, but we're watching this and it's absolutely preposterous. And if the setup made more sense, if we understood the rules of the universe, that could all be really fun.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean,
and is kind of indicative of what the earliest issues were. I mean, like, when you look at the earliest, say, 10 issues of Spawn, it wasn't taking itself too seriously. And, like, there was some potential pathos at the core of it. So, some potential really, really good, tragic character stuff. But it was a melodrama. And McFarlane used to throw that word around all the time. Early on, he used to say, like, these comics, mainstream comics, were about making a good melodrama, and it was supposed to be over the top. It was supposed to be goofy, and at some point, he started to kind of take himself too seriously, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like early on he was trying to do the Stan Lee melodrama thing from the 60s comics that Lee was working on with, all of his Cyber, his Kirby, Ditko, Everett, all those guys. Because I've seen McFarlane say before that, Stan Lee is kind of his idol.
Yeah, well, and I've seen lots of interviews with them together. They both have a lot of mutual respect.
Yeah, it's strange that he strayed so far from that later on. It's really strange. This movie is, if anything, extremely faithful to the source material from what you've told me. To the point where he even, has a base in an alley where he sits around and is sad.
I mean, the major set pieces are there. The major players are, a lot of them are there. But I'll mention some places where things are actually quite different.
Oh, interesting.
For instance, and part of what makes it awkward is it depends on what section of Spawn we're talking about and what's been retconned, because all over that book we just keep changing what happened in the past. My stepdad left a comment I wish I thought of this on an episode of Spawn Year once that always stuck with me, and that was, by the way, the fire there is odd because the stuff that they spray him with, if I remember right, is the stuff that you have to coat a person with so that they can be set on fire.
Oh yeah.
So that you so like in movies you can actually set a person on fire and they won't get hurt. And I'm within the context of the movie, I'm not real sure what they're spraying on him. Is it gasoline? I can't. It looks like some kind of like weird gooey rubbery substance. I don't know what that is, but anyway, if anybody knows what that's actually supposed to be and it's supposed to be a thing, let me know. But anyway, Jeff left a comment. My stepdad on an episode of Spawn Year once where he said it seems like what Spawn comics do is they let the past constantly change and evolve and morph, and the present stays stagnant, which is the opposite from what a narrative does.
Yeah,
and that's absolutely true, and that's what it does. And that's a major theme that I kept kind of touching on throughout Spawn Year, that we keep seeing the past change. McFarlane keeps going, no, actually it happened this way. I'm like, no, you showed this to us already and it was this other way. And he would come up with either excuses or just straight up say it was different, and now it's different. And so for instance, so with things that changed, but then it depends on when we're talking about, sometimes in Spawn Jason Wynn killed him directly, or like was more involved with that. Sometimes he didn't. It's always hard to tell even exactly why he killed him and what the whole point of all of that was. One of the things in the comics that is not always clear is whether or not Al Simmons killed people because he thought he was doing good and the right thing, or if he was just like really unhinged and insane and loved killing people and was just an evil man. Oh. And when you get to the end of Brian Haldwin's run, we find out that the whole idea was that he actually has very little humanity in him and was kind of evil from birth. Huh. And one of the things I like about this movie is that it straight up tells us that he was just naive and misguided.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to make a person that is a sociopath sympathetic, right?
Well, and what's nice is this movie actually attempts to make him kind of sympathetic. Like as we see him right here, he's upset. He doesn't know what's happened to him. He's kind of like, he's going to be mean to people because he just like doesn't know where he is or what's going on. He's disoriented. But like, he has a little bit, even right here, a little bit of restraint, a little bit of reserve. He's not straight up just like screaming at people with his jaw dropped all the way to the ground, where you can imagine like a giant word balloon 6,000 feet like wide above his head screaming at people. He doesn't do that in this movie.
Yeah, he doesn't yell, this is Spawn territory.
Yeah, exactly. So like Michael Jai White brings some humanity to this role that was not in the comics much of the time.
Even in the early stuff? That's interesting.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and I mean, like again, in the early stuff, you got a little bit more of a sense that there might be some humanity to this guy, but a lot of the time he was just written as a total jerk for no reason. He was just always screaming at people, always mad at people, really, really, really selfish. All that mattered was getting back to his wife, and he just didn't really care about anything else. But then sometimes the book would pretend like he was a hero, and you're supposed to go along with it. He would have some character progression, and then we would regress it, and then eventually we got to the point where he just never progressed at all. I always resisted having this this regular kid character in this movie.
Oh yeah.
And just because, it's kind of that sappy, like, okay, you'll like him better if there's a kid involved. And kids are instantly supposed to be sympathetic, and so it works. It was kind of clear that it was just a ploy to try to make the PG-13 thing work, where it's like, yeah, it's okay if kids see this, even though source material wise, by the way, that CG looks really bad.
A lot of the CG in this movie is pretty bad.
And you got to have a little bit of historical perspective. A lot of stuff looked a little bit better in 97, but even then, some of this felt pretty shoddy to me.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm thinking specifically of Hell and the way Malbolgia looks. Like they couldn't even get his mouth to move with the words that he speaks.
Yeah, now that was dumb, but Hell itself was a thing that I was really impressed with back in the day, and something that even Roger Ebert commented on as being a very new vision of Hell that he'd never seen before.
Oh, cool, interesting.
And it's just we've seen so much Hell now that you look at it in this movie and it's like nothing special.
Right.
But back then, it seemed kind of innovative actually.
So with Malbolgia, like,
Yeah,
is he the devil? Like, he's the Satan from Judeo-Christian mythology?
he's not. He's one of many devils.
Okay.
And what McFarlane and some of this came from Alan Moore did in the comics is basically mixed a whole bunch of different versions of cosmic stuff, and I mean of religions and of different mythologies together. And so the Malbolgia thing comes mostly from Dante's Inferno, and the
Right.
idea is
The seven
he
layers of
is
hell and stuff.
yeah, and he runs one of the he runs one of the circles, and he's like the most powerful of them. But there actually is a real devil.
Oh, okay. Wait, is it's six layers of hell, right? I don't know why I said seven.
I think it's nine.
Is it nine? Wow, I don't know what I'm talking about.
Have you ever read Dante?
I have not. I would like to
Another
read
thing
one.
Another thing that's different here, of course, well, a few major things actually in this scene. One of them is Wanda and Al were not married in this version.
Which is strange because they have like a really nice house together
I'm
before
not
they're
sure
married.
what I'm not really sure what the wisdom was there of changing that. And then Terry is a white guy in this just because they were worried that if they had too many black people in this movie, that people would look at it as a black movie and white people wouldn't go see it.
What? That's
Yep.
terrible.
And what's funny is, and maybe this is going to sound horrible when I say this, but like that is the closest to actually looking like comic book Terry Fitzgerald I think a white guy could possibly get.
Oh yeah?
He kind of looks like a white version of Terry Fitzgerald.
Oh, that's funny. What do you think of
And
all the kind of
yeah,
crude sex humor in that? He had like Wanda spanking Terry earlier, and Clown is. I feel like that's probably in his character from the comics. He makes really crude jokes all the time. But there's a lot of it in this movie, and I kind of roll my eyes every time it happens.
yeah, it's not gross. It's not funny. It's weird watching the commentary that the producers did on this movie because they think it's all just absolutely hysterical. And clearly, in a lot of ways, this movie just wasn't made for me. And the problem is, it's one of those movies that doesn't really know who it's for, so it's trying to be accessible. It's trying to be for everybody, but it's like it clearly hates that it's PG-13.
Yeah.
Now I get that we're watching the air quotes rated R version, but it's this version doesn't have a lot of stuff put back in it really. It's kind of crazy, by the way, watching a thing called the director's cut that still feels like there's way too much cut out of it.
Yeah,
Or at
funny.
least that more it could have used more meat, more stuff could have been put in it. And so I think that Clown being this crude and gross and vulgar was an attempt at making it feel adult enough for the Spawn fans and for the people that wanted to go to this movie because of what they had read in Spawn or heard about Spawn, and that like something about it was going to be like kind of off base and not what your parents would want you to see and that kind of thing.
Right.
And what's really weird is that Clown is almost never this disgusting in the comics.
Oh, really?
Yeah, at least again in the earliest stuff, especially. I mean, there's places, but it's not like a really super gross joke a minute. Like they think that they are like the Three Stooges of gross out comedy
Huh.
in this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's not working. It's all just like it just kind of gives me a stomach ache listening to it. And in the comics, he says more things that are actually kind of clever. I mean, like he's still supposed to be crude, but it's clever. A lot of it actually kind of works a little bit better.
Oh, okay, interesting. Um, is Clown like the arch enemy of Spawn, or is it Jason Wynn? Like in the comics, who would you say is like the arch enemy of Spawn, or is it kind of like the Spider-Man thing where he's got more than one, and you can make an argument for?
Yeah, it's more like that. Uh, I guess the best way to put it, this might be giving too much credit to the source material, but like the best way to put it would be to say that Jason Wynn is Al Simmons' arch nemesis, and Clown is sort of Spawn's, although it's really Malbolgia.
Okay.
It would have been. I mean, there are places where Clown ends up seeming a lot more like, Spawn's arch nemesis because he actually takes some initiative and tries to do something. There's a line later on in this that Clown has to Bulgy where he says, "It should be me. I have the tenure." I like that line a lot, by the way. I had the tenure. Clown doesn't like that humans. Oh, by the way, here's what you're talking about. Malbolgia's mouth just doesn't move. Why? It's a major motion picture.
Yeah.
Wide release, had plenty, but why? Spawn for the time, Spawn standing there without his costume, totally, like mutilated and charred up like that. That looks okay.
Yeah, it does. One of the things that I think is weird about Spawn's
A lot of that's makeup, I think, but that looks pretty good.
Yeah, one of the weird things about Spawn's motivation that doesn't make any sense to me is he agrees to be the Hellspawn so that he can be with Wanda, but in order to see Wanda, he has to start the apocalypse. Everyone's going to die, even him and Wanda. Well, not him, potentially, but Wanda will die.
Well, the idea is supposed to be, I think, and this, I think, rarely, if ever, really comes off the page enough or off the screen or what have you, that Al Simmons is a desperate man whose soul is condemned to hell. And if somebody offered you the thing that you cared most about in that moment, no matter what it was they wanted in return, maybe you'd say yes. And that's supposed to be the idea, and that's supposed to be the kind of like sympathetic thing that makes us really care about him, even though that's also indicative of his big character flaw. That at least in this movie, that Al Simmons is kind of gullible, kind of naive.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose. I just think it's weird that he's like, I will make this deal to start Armageddon because you need me to do it. Like, does Bulgy need him to do it, or is he going to do it anyway?
Yeah, good question.
Like, because if he just said I'm not going to do it, and he's like the chosen one or something. Well, if I was him, I care about Wanda, I would stay in hell so she doesn't get killed along with everybody else.
Yeah, but he doesn't ask any questions. He doesn't think about it.
Right.
And that's the thing is that those are the kinds of questions that you're asking because you're watching the movie. If you were reading the comics, the questions you would be asking would be more along the lines of, how can I be sure that anything that Al Simmons remembers is really true, because he gets all of his memories back from Malbolgia and he always has some degree of amnesia. So in this, he has some amnesia at the very beginning, but they get past that real fast, which I appreciate.
That is good.
And I wish that was in every version. Al Simmons is doing something right now that is right out of Morrison's 3 issues of Spawn. He's digging up his grave to see if his body's actually in there. Now, you would think that this would be something in, like, say, issue 2 or 3, right?
Yeah.
This happens in issue 19, or maybe it's 17. This happens a year and a half into the run.
So
it takes that long for him to even think to do this. Now, to be fair, in the movie here, Clown is kind of taking him through a tour of his own personal hell. And he is helping him remember everything and figure stuff out, which is kind of weird. I mean, I get that Clown is supposed to be his personal guide. I'm not sure why Bulgy doesn't just give him his memories back right away, and then Clown can actually teach him how to be a Hellspawn, but they're doing this for the audience's benefit.
Right.
The clown scream is kind of funny. There's stuff he does here and there that's kind of amusing. Let's talk a bit about John Leguizamo. His performance in this is, I'm going to go as far as to say, inspired. I don't like a lot of what they give him to say, but he is definitively the right choice for this role. I mean, you wouldn't think that until you put him in the fat suit and everything, but he is straight off the page.
Yeah.
And like I said, I don't like a lot of the stuff that they give him to say, but he's perfect. He's straight off the page, and he's going through a lot of physical pain to make this role work. He is literally, his legs are literally forced in a crouching position in those pants in
Really?
order. Yeah. And I mean, like, it's got to be excruciating. I don't know why he allowed himself to go through that, but he is so committed to this role and making it work. And you can tell he's having the time of his life in this. What is it with John Leguizamo and really bad movies based on geeky properties?
I don't know.
You know, he was great as Luigi. You and I did that movie and talked about it.
Yeah. I like
And
John Leguizamo.
he's great here. I just recently saw him again in John Wick, and he's really good in that. He doesn't get a lot to do in it, but he's really good in that.
It's a shame that he doesn't get more high-profile work to do, because I think he's a talented guy.
Oh yeah, he's talented. He's versatile. There's a lot of stuff he can do. I mean, you know, you think about other things you've seen him in. He's unrecognizable here.
Exactly. If you didn't tell me that was him and I didn't see his name in the credits, I wouldn't think that was him.
Yeah, I mean, you're just looking at Clown. He's right off the page. It's fantastic. I like the accent he's come up with for him. I like that he sounds like he sounds kind of like an exaggerated New Yorker.
Yeah, he does. In the two geeky property movies that he's in, he plays an exaggerated New Yorker.
So the idea with Clown is supposed to be that he's charged with showing Spawn's, air quotes, the ropes, which actually works way better here because he's actually doing his job. In the comics, he shows up and just immediately starts attacking Spawn, and we find out that he doesn't like that he's having to. I mean that like human beings get to be spawns. As I said, that's kind of in this movie a little bit. I wish it was brought out more. We could get some more personal motivation for him. But yeah, in the comics, he just starts like randomly attacking Spawn, and then Malebolgia gets mad about that, and then takes his powers away.
So what?
And I don't know why he chose that moment to do that after he has had to help other spawns presumably. Learn, air quote, the ropes. But like, I think let's reel this back a bit. I think the important thing to note is that a lot of what made this work for people and what made Spawn in general work for people is the novelty of the idea. In the early '90s, there was a lot less of this kind of thing, and it felt kind of, like I said, it felt novel. It was like more family stuff was kind of in. There was some kind of dark stuff here and there, but like this was supposed to kind of push envelopes and go places that were, not appropriate and proper in most settings, and like just how far can you really go with violence, and it's all really gratuitous, right? And that was kind of the idea with this character. And for me as a kid in the early '90s, this kind of thing was really appealing simply because it was new and different, and it made me feel like I was testing my own limitations. I was kind of an innocent kid, and there was something here that seemed kind of like wrong and weird, and like I wanted to know more about it. And so just the basic, you're supposed to put yourself in Spawn's shoes and say, how horrible and scary and terrifying and nightmarish would it be to be put in his position? And that was it. The premise was supposed to carry the whole thing.
Yeah.
And did for a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, it was immensely popular back then. I remember seeing like images of Spawn when I was a kid, and I'm younger than you, so I kind of wasn't allowed to see anything or read anything Spawn until it kind of died in its
By
popularity.
the way, we just saw another of the talking heads, the kind of conservative opinionated guy, and looks just like him. It's kind of fun that they did those, even though in the comics they can be really annoying because they often either tell you things you know already or tell you things that you'd rather learn from following a character. And both this movie and the comics, although the comics a lot more so, are really bad at for the most part, keeping you actually in with a character and not just very arbitrarily giving you information from random places. You know, I want to learn things along with my protagonist. I want to get in his head. I want to like feel what he's feeling. And I'm always so distanced from Al Simmons. This is some of the least distanced I feel from him, which is really strange and not saying much. But when you get into the animated series, they get you a lot closer to him, and he's more consistent there.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to watch that at some point because I've heard it's interesting, and I don't know.
Yeah, it's not brilliant, but it's pretty. And third season is bordering on really good.
Oh, cool.
In fact, no, third season is really good. I'd say it's bordering on art. I mean, it's really good. When you get to the end of it, it just sucks because it's over, and that's how that's the thing I have with most good Spawn stuff is that if it's good, it never got finished.
So Jason Wynn's
Or right.
plan. So Jason Wynn's plan doesn't make any sense to me throughout this entire movie.
Yeah, oh, wait, I'm sorry. Before you get there, let's mention that because this is one of the few times we'll see it. You don't see Spawn's cape very much in this.
Yeah, and that's like one of the best parts of the costume.
Yep, that's one of the signature things. Now, I like this costume a lot. I think they did a great job with it. It's a little different from what it is in the comics. I like that it's like this hard shell skin. I think it makes a lot of sense for what the Spawn costume actually is. And once again, I don't think we've had enough of an explanation about how Spawn's powers work for him to just start having guns.
Yeah, it kind of works like a Green Lantern ring later on. He can kind of just will whatever he wants to do as long as he concentrates hard enough.
I mean,
Um,
maybe the idea is he just doesn't really understand his powers yet, and that he has them because he hasn't really done much with them yet.
like, how do his powers work in the comics? Can he just will things to happen like a Green Lantern ring in the comics?
Yeah, Spawn's powers are basically limitless. He can do just about anything.
Oh, okay.
The only thing I've never seen Spawn do really is time travel.
Oh, okay.
But like he can teleport, he can bring people back from the dead. He can do just about anything.
Huh. That's weird.
Well, because the idea is supposed to be that he has the powers of a god basically, and it's just that his weakness is if he depletes them all really fast, then he goes back to hell, and that's the end of his time on Earth. Now the question always is, why are spawns trained on Earth in the first place? I can't answer that. I have no idea.
Yeah, me either.
And that has perplexed me the entire time I've been studying this character. I don't understand it. He gets sent to Earth because that's where Wanda is. And by the way, the whole idea there too, because you were asking me about that. The whole idea there too is supposed to be that Malbolgia tricks him. He thinks he'll get to stay with her, but he actually just gets to see her once, and that sometimes plays as kind of awkward. But that's supposed to be the idea. Well, okay, so he's put on Earth and gets to see her once, and then he can't be with her because he's this Hellspawn thing, and she wouldn't go back with him, and because she has a child with another man. I think if memory serves, it's been a little while since I've watched this. If memory serves, Dan, in this version, is Cyan actually Alan Wanda's and not Terry's?
I think she's Terry's and Wanda's
Oh,
in
she
this.
is
Yeah.
Terry's. Okay. I thought maybe there was something about how like maybe she's actually Alice. I forget what it is. In the comics, it's really weird and convoluted. Where it's actually, or at least in Brian Hogman stuff, because it's all supposed to be canon, but then things get retconned. But the idea is supposed to be that in there that she's Terry's and Wanda's, but her soul or something was meant to be Al and Wanda's.
Oh, that's
I don't
weird.
know what I don't know what that means, but that's anyway. But real quick about the cape. When we see it, it's pretty cool. And
Yeah, I
again, like
mean,
for the time, it looked a lot better than I think maybe it's holding up now. I mean, it's pretty CGE, but
I wish it was a physical prop. I don't know. I feel like that lady looks like a Power Ranger.
uh, that is uh, that is Angela.
Oh, she looked like she had a green Power Ranger T-shirt on.
Um, if we are looking at the same spot, did you notice the Hellspawn rings? I mean, the Hellspawn earrings.
Oh no, I didn't notice that.
Those are trophies that that Angela got in killing spawns from the past, and that's her one little cameo in this. Really too bad that she didn't get to be a character in this movie.
Yeah, that is unfortunate.
We'll talk a little bit later about stuff that almost happened in this movie that would have been infinitely more interesting, and you will about cry when you find out what was supposed to happen. But we keep seeing signs for A6 everywhere. That's the government agency that Wynn runs. By the way, lots of smoking in this movie. That's the agency that Wynn runs, and I don't think it was comic book before this. It was all over the comics after this. It's so weird because if you read Spawn comics and you go watch this, it looks a lot more faithful to stuff. But it's actually that the comics just started coalescing to this movie.
Oh, interesting.
I'm sorry, you had a whole topic you wanted to talk about earlier.
I was gonna talk about Jason Wynn's plan, but it'll
Go
probably
ahead.
come up again.
Okay, all right, cool. Because there's some stuff in this scene to talk about.
Right.
Yeah, when he drops and he's got the cape and stuff, that looks really cool. I think the problem with it being a physical prop, or at least this was the problem from the director and producer standpoint, is well, but it's supposed to go off screen. It's supposed to flail everywhere. I mean, if you want to make it look like it did in the comics, that's what you do with it. And if the whole movie was, again, a little more stylistic, if you went more in a Sin City direction with this, again, I know this predates that, but you could get away with more unreal-looking things. And part of the problem is just, you look at the film, everything looks just too normal.
Yeah. It bothers me that he takes the mask off so much in this movie. I think it's really strange that he feels the need to, like, nobody's gonna recognize him anyway, you know?
Well, but you could say the same thing for putting it on.
That's what I'm saying. Like, why put it down if, like, nobody's gonna recognize his face in the first place, right? Just keep the mask
Yeah.
on.
Or keep it off. It doesn't really matter either way, unless you just don't want people to see your creepy, charred up, fired off face.
Right. And I don't know. I think the mask looks cooler than the charred, creepy face. But
I think the makeup's okay. By the way, Michael J. White's reaction here is kind of weird. Yeah, I never cared for that. That I don't know. That's just me. I always thought that was weird. That was a weird choice. But anyway, so I mean, there's just things in like that in here that make it feel really B movie-ish for me. I don't know what it is, but just things that I see more in like really small time, low budget kind of movies.
yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's just that it's dated now, but the movie doesn't look like it used its budget all that well from what I'm seeing here. Like,
And it didn't.
the props just look really cheesy and stuff. Like, the guns that she was using, her outfit, like, I don't know, it just looks real cheesy to me.
Yeah. Uh, and if that was working more for the movie, that'd be all right.
And his, like, crotch belt thing biting her leg is just weird.
Yeah. We're going every day is Halloween. There's some one-liners in this where I'm like, I don't know, guys. I feel like we could have tried a little harder. Why do his eyes glow red? I don't know.
I have no idea.
That's really weird. I don't know why they do that. He has necroplasm or psychoplasm, as Morrison called it. It's all green. Clown acts almost like Q from Star Trek in this. He just shows up in random places with crazy costumes.
Yes, he does. Later on, he'll have a cheerleader one on, which is really weird.
Yeah, it's really weird. In answer to your question about taking the mask off, I'd say a lot of it is so that he can give a performance.
I suppose so. I mean, I don't know. I just think the mask looks so cool, and he has it on like so little in the entire movie. Like, he was just in a big fight with people, and then he gets into a big fight with more people. He needs to put the mask on for some reason. I just don't understand.
Yeah, I mean, like when they start shooting at him and he puts the mask on, that makes a little more sense because it's armored.
Well, but the lady was shooting at him too, or she had the potential to be. She was pointing two large guns at him.
Oh yeah, yeah. You're talking about Jessica Priest. Yeah. His spikes are bouncy spikes. Like they're clearly rubber or something, and they just don't quite work. I don't know why. He's all spiky like that. That's really strange. In the comics, that only happens when, well, in a couple places. Primarily, it only happens when he's around heavenly things, because like the costume gets sick and gets all spiky. Here, it seems like a defense mechanism, and I don't know why they did that because it doesn't look great. But then in the manga, he goes, he has like a whole armor thing where he just, I think, goes like spiky all over, and actually looks really cool in that.
Oh, cool.
That also postdates this, but
That wall crawling scene always, because the Venom. I mean, I see. I just said it. The Spawn costume without the cape looks so much like the Venom costume. Just seeing that climbing on walls, I'm like, oh well, that looks to be homaging some of McFarlane's work before Spawn.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And I mean, the mythology he gave for Spawn, he made the suit very much like Venom. I mean, it comes from a different place and it's got different properties. The biggest difference is with Venom, I understand the properties.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think the idea with the cape was supposed to be, well, we can do stuff like this if it's CG, but then can't we have? Couldn't we maybe find a midpoint, Dan? And of course, this is the money shot, and it looks good. I mean, I like this a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But that's very much a full page spread kind of a Spawn panel. But anyway, like you gotta wonder why you couldn't have done what you were suggesting earlier, just have a physical cape, and then when you want to make it all crazy huge, then it goes CG.
Right. Exactly. I mean, if Spawn's powers are so fluid and he can do anything, it would be, you know, it would to me it would make some sort of sense for him to be able to change the size of it if he wants to look dramatic.
And he can, sure. I
Yeah.
mean, that's he has full control over that whole suit. So we just got rid of Jessica Priest, rendering her completely and utterly useless.
Yeah. Why was she even in this movie?
Well, I'll tell you why. First of all, they felt the need. McFarlane felt the need to have somebody uh, kill Spawn that wasn't Chapel. Now, the way this movie does it, there's really no reason it couldn't have been Wynn all by himself.
Yeah.
But they had to give him a hinge chick. Maybe some of it was we didn't have enough women in this movie, so we wanted an evil woman because Spawn comics have a lot of overly sexualized women. They're for teenage kids that want to see hot chicks, and so we got that in there. But originally the idea, and I don't remember exactly why they didn't go with this, if they just ran out of budget or what the deal was. Originally the idea was Jessica Priest dies, and then Malebolgia sends her back as a second Spawn.
Oh, cool.
And that could have been really neat, and would have somewhat, although not completely, answered an issue that I raised when I did my rewind on this movie, which was, why in the world wouldn't you pick the evilest person on Earth over Al Simmons? Because, like, she would make a way better Spawn than him. Because wouldn't you want someone who would just agree outright? Just find a crazy psychopath or somebody who's just already really evil, because this universe is obviously full of them, and just, like, pick that person, because obviously Clown and being affiliated with Wynn in the first place, the whole idea was Hell wants Al Simmons, so they orchestrate his death.
Yes.
That's the whole idea. It's not that somebody just dies and they pick someone. So if they're going to orchestrate a death, why Al Simmons? Why not anybody else? Like, he has too much heart. He cares too much about people. He's naive. He thinks he's doing good things for the country. Just pick somebody who doesn't mind that they're working for Hell.
Well, maybe he picked Elle because he's naive, like you said before. Like, someone that evil, maybe she's, like, too smart for Malebolgia. She's not, like, a blunt weapon. I don't know.
I don't know, but like there should be some discussion about it, And
Yeah.
in the comics, it takes a really long time before we finally find out why it had to be Al and no one else, and then it gets so convoluted that clearly there was never an answer in McFarlane's head in the first place.
Right.
It was so, you know, uh, it was so retroactive. So it's a movie that's supposed to be okay, sort of for families. So we got to have a couple kids and a dog. And importantly, in the comics, Spawn tends to only get like more tempered and like a little bit more reserved and actually kind of likable when he's around children.
Oh, well, that's convenient.
And usually it requires him to get really, really injured first. So usually it's like the only time I like Spawn in the comics generally is when he gets really injured and he's barely able to function and there's children around, which happens more often than you would think.
I'd imagine that's kind of like the token scenes for McFarlane where he's trying to get you to, tug on your heartstrings and stuff like that, huh?
That's it.
And this is the weird scene we were talking about earlier with Clown being a cheerleader.
And these things are just thrown in here randomly because he's our comic relief.
And he's not funny at all. Speaking of him, that scene earlier with him and Jason Wynn, I have no idea what their relationship is. Like, is Jason Wynn working with Malbolgia in this? Do they ever make that explicit?
No, they don't, and that probably wouldn't happen. I don't see that Malbolgia would. There's my favorite clown line. Yeah, the 10-year. This green screen looks really bad, and that's not just a dated thing. That's just. I mean, I've seen lots of green screen before this that looks better than this. This just looks really bad.
Yeah.
You guys did not chroma that very well at all. But anyway, yeah, Dan, I don't know. I don't know that Jason Wynn even knows much about Malbolgia at all. I mean, it seems like he's working with Clown because Clown is gonna offer him the means to destroy the world, but then why does he want to do that?
Yeah, I don't understand what Jason Wynn's motivations are at all. Like, he wants to release this virus on the planet that kills everybody. To what end? I don't get it.
Yeah. He's completely two-dimensional. He's just a bad guy. And we're not even really commenting on anything, right?
No.
Like, there's not really any commentary about it. It's just okay. Big evil government guy with too much power.
It's just
doing.
Yeah. It's not even like to his self-interest. Like, he will probably die too, and be left either that or be left alone with no one else. I just don't get it.
Also, if you were Cyan's parents, you would not let her have a doll that creepy, especially a doll whose head like spins around and has creepy green stuff that pops out of it. Like why are we allowing this? Her parents are about as dumb as they are in the comics.
Yeah, and this whole thing with him, like, the dog doesn't come immediately when I call, and then says the dog will find its way home. Like, how far away are they from their house?
It's pretty big. It's a pretty big city, Dan. They're in New York, dude.
Yeah, so like, if that was me, like, I'd be pretty sad if I was that girl. If my dad was like, "We're leaving the dog here; it will find its own way home," you know.
And again, that's standard for those characters.
Really?
Where like Terry and Wanda both, yeah, they'll just, especially Terry, he'll just say stupid stuff that makes him really unlikable, and it feels like you have to go out of your way to make people that unlikable.
Yeah.
And then maybe we gave Al a dog in this so that it would be easier to appreciate him or something, where it's like he's got that one link to his old life.
Right.
Kind of typical, but...
Speaking of typical, this whole situation with the kid and his dad made me roll my eyes every time they were on screen together. Because it's the most typical thing I've ever seen. Like the stereotypical abusive loser father that doesn't raise his kid properly even though his kid has potential.
Yep. Once again, that's just this material.
And Spawn, like, is ready to slaughter this guy in front of his kid.
Yep. And again, that's just the character. He kills everything. The animated series actually kind of delves a little bit into that, and interestingly even deals with why he's so not proactive. This version is at least a little bit less that way, but mostly just because things keep pointing him in a direction to go. sort of like Clown's like, go here now. And he's like, okay, I'll go there now. And then he fights things. And he's kind of just being manipulated by Hell so that Cagliostro could say, you're playing right into their hands.
This device Wynn puts into his chest makes no sense. So, if Jason Wynn dies, everyone else dies. If Jason Wynn releases the virus himself, everyone, including him, dies. So
apparently, yeah. What is in it for him? Why is he doing any of this? And he just seems like he's completely and I don't know. It's like, is this a movie about naive characters? Is that what we're doing?
Like the logical way to fix this problem is Jason Wynn works for Malbolgia, and he's trying to kill everyone so that he can get more soldiers and souls for his army.
The way it seems, and again, it's just awkward, you don't know, but the way it seems is that it's like he doesn't really understand what he's getting himself into.
Yeah.
But all you have to do is give him... I mean, this movie is really easily rewritable, right? Like, all you have to do is have Hell give him something that he really wants. Maybe that, I don't know, tells you something about the way he looks at the world. That'd be nice.
Yeah.
And then... he doesn't realize that what Hell is getting in return is somehow the means to do whatever horrible things they're going to do. The problem is, Malbolgia is super powerful. He's created a being in Spawn that we've already seen turn invisible and shoot chains out of himself, and he's got suction cup hands that look really dopey. You know, he can do all this stuff. But he needs some kind of super virus to kill all of humanity. Now, if this were the comics, I would say that the whole idea is he's looking for a way to get rid of as many humans all at once as possible so that he can get a whole bunch of souls all at once to be in his army.
Yeah.
Now, the question, of course, is that explicitly said in this? I forget.
No, it's not.
Oh, okay, well, that'd be nice.
That's what... I'm assuming that's what Clown is leading Wynn down this path, like he's directing him down that path. But I don't understand how much Wynn knows, and if he doesn't know anything, what his motivations would be for wanting to kill everybody. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, his don't make sense. But again, Hell's don't make a lot of sense either. You got to ask the same question I'm always asking about this material. Why now?
Yeah. That's true.
Why now as opposed to any other time? Why? It's just we had to wait for the technology to catch up so that we'd have the means to send out the super virus. Why can't...
The Black Plague killed lots of people. Why didn't you just do this during medieval Europe?
Yeah! Is Malbolgia worried for some reason about people knowing about Hell? Or there must be rules we don't know about. That, like, the only thing I can figure, just based on what I know from the comics, is that maybe Hell... is only allowed to do certain things in the deal they currently have with Heaven, or they're like stopped from doing things for some reason, and they can't just like send a whole horde of demons yet, so they have to make something happen first. I don't know. The other thing is, we're not even told in this movie where souls go when they die exactly. So if you kill a whole bunch of souls all at one time, if that's the idea, and again, I'm completely projecting from what I know from the comics here, because none of this is in the movie. Yeah. But if that were the idea, Dan, because I don't know why else you'd kill all these people all at once, then how do we know watching this movie that Heaven's not going to get as many soldiers as they are?
Yeah, exactly. And
we don't know. They just want to kill a bunch of people. That's it. Let's not read any more into it. There's nothing in this. There's nothing here.
The weird thing about this movie too is like when he almost murdered that dude in the alley back there, he figured out how to use the chains and spikes on his suit, and he was using his powers to climb walls and stuff before. And then later on in the movie, Cagliostro acts like Spawn doesn't know how to use his powers, and they have a training montage, and he doesn't do anything more spectacular other than will the heart piece out of Wynn's chest at the end of the movie.
Which is hilarious, and we'll get to that.
Yeah.
Yep, you're absolutely right. So here we come up to the clown transformation to Violator, and if memory serves, this is where Todd McFarlane's... Well, we gotta have the dog peeing, that's classic. If memory serves, this is where McFarlane's cameo is.
Oh, I didn't even see that the first time through.
I'll point it out to you when we see it. Put down my dog. That's the badass you were hoping to see in this movie, isn't it, Dad? Yeah.
Of course.
Like even if you want to look at this as just this movie that degenerates into a bunch of pointless violence, a lot of the time it's not even good at that, right? Like it's not even fun. Like why if it wants to just be like a really dark, violent action fest, and there's really not much more to it than that. Like, I'm not going to completely condone that. It'd be nice if you had movies that were motivated by characters that I liked and stuff. But I'm just saying that, like, if that was your purpose and that's all you were doing, then let's not have like Spawn have a dog and have a kid that is really annoying and all that kind of stuff. But obviously, they think they need all of that because what they're trying to create a uh, is a transcending kind of movie that is just summer blockbuster schlock that they can sell a lot of tickets for, and that kids and parents will go watch. I do think Violator looks really good.
Yeah, he looks a lot better than Malbolgia. His mouth moves.
Yeah, and it helps that he doesn't talk too.
But like he
Violator
roars
doesn't
and
talk.
his mouth like moved with
Yeah.
roaring tones.
Actually, Violator does talk. I don't think in this he talks. See, there he's got a reason to put the mask back on.
That's true. So what's the deal? Is Violator what Clown really looks like, or is Clown what Clown really looks like, and Violator is something he turns into?
Oh wow, you don't even know that because you haven't read any comics, and I guess you wouldn't know that just watching this, really.
Yeah.
Except for the fact, of course, that we've seen Malbolgia's true form. Like that's the only way he looks. So I think from that you could about extrapolate this is what Violator really looks like.
Okay.
If that makes any sense, I don't know. Okay, so there is leaking necroplasm.
So like
there's McFarlane. There's McFarlane.
Oh, okay.
That's Todd. Yep, there he is. But anyway, I'm sorry, real quick. The end of what I was saying a second ago was just that you'd get rated R if you didn't do this stuff, so that's why they did it. Anyway, so yeah, McFarlane thought it would be really cool to have like Spawn turn a gun on him, which is fun.
Uh-huh. So the thing with like, can Clown take any form he wants?
It depends on what issue you're reading.
I'm just curious as to why the gross midget clown dude is his form of choice.
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a really good question. I've never known the answer to that. There are a couple of things that would lead you to believe that for some reason that's just the form that Malbolgia has graced him with because he's kind of a jerk boss.
Oh, okay.
And that even back in like the Middle Ages and stuff, that's what he looked like, which I think is really funny.
Oh, wow.
And there's some places where he gets his regular Violator forms taken away and he's stuck in that form, but that doesn't explain why it's that form in the first place. Way later on, probably like early middle 100s or so, if memory serves, Clown. We learned that Clown actually is supposed to be able to turn into any form, and I don't remember that ever being mentioned prior to that, or why he doesn't do that all the time.
Yeah.
So I have no idea. What another thing that's I mean, so you're noticing, Dan, that a lot of this is completely arbitrary, right? Like
Yeah.
we just don't know. I do like, by the way, that Spawn's mask, like his eyes, he actually has different expressions. That's
cool because
looks really good.
that's one of the things I always liked about like Batman in the comics and Spider-Man. Like their eyes will change depending on their facial expression, and there's no way to do that in live action with the way that the masks have always been done. But there you can do that kind of thing. It's kind of comic booky. It's cool.
Well, I guess they gave us a decent reason there for the spikes, that he pops them out and he's able to hurt Violator with them, but then it just pins him to this thing in a really annoying, obvious crucifixion thing, which I could have really done without.
Yeah.
But yeah, so as I said, a lot of this is really arbitrary. In the comics, Violator's got a bunch of other brothers. They're called the Fulbeic brothers, and none of them, as far as I know, ever turn into anything.
Oh, they don't also turn into midget like amusement people like mimes or something?
No, I don't believe they do, Dan. You know, it's occurring to me that the majority of the commentary so far has pretty much just been me explaining to Dan what the comics are like.
I mean, it's helpful because a lot of this movie doesn't make a whole lot of sense unless you've read the comics. Even the comics don't make all that much sense. If that
Yeah.
makes any sense.
Yes, it does, Dan. That's exactly right. Just one time, could we have not gotten? I just thought of this. Clown's got that smiley face button. Could we have not gotten like some ketchup on that or something?
I didn't even notice
Like
that
a
was a smiley
little,
face.
little drip of blood or something? That would have been kind of a nice little, especially because Alan Moore worked on Spawn.
Yeah. How many issues did you write? Just one?
Alan Moore wrote a couple.
Were they good?
He did. Yeah, Alan Moore actually invented all the initial Hell stuff. So he's the one that gave us the circles and all of that. And I
Oh,
don't know if
yes. Okay.
I never knew if that was like McFarlane's idea or if that was him and then McFarlane kept running with it or what it was. But then he also gave us the first issue with the Freak. And then he never came back because I think either McFarlane decided to just quit using other people, which was smart because he kept retconning everything. I mean, like using guest people because he just retcons everything, or people found it difficult to work with him and didn't come back.
Right.
I'm not sure.
Now, I think Jason Wynn may have a security problem here, where anyone can just waltz into his office and make copies of his evil master plan to kill everyone, including himself, on Earth.
Well, he had to put in a passcode. I mean, he works there.
But to get into his office,
Is I
like
forget, but like, isn't he his assistant and stuff?
I thought he was just like his propaganda dude that goes on TV and explains to the media that what his agency is doing is good in this
That's
movie.
what he's done in this movie so far. Yeah.
But like, is he like a secret agent like Al in the comics too?
Yeah, he has a desk job.
Okay.
But yeah, so here we've got a Cagliostro who, just like in the comics, just says a bunch of kind of random things that sound like they might be wise unless you actually pay attention to what he's saying. No real good reason for him not to have a beard, except that Nicole Williamson either wanted his face seen or they decided they wanted his face seen. I don't know. It's kind of unfortunate. I always like the giantly long beard.
This guy just strikes me as like a Deus Ex Machina thing. Like, whenever Spawn needs to be, like, it's kind of like Clown too. Like you were saying, Clown shows up to tell Spawn what to do, and Cogliostro is the same way. But
Except that he's supposed to be kind of on the side of good because he's been a Spawn before, and
right, but it's just really, I don't know. He like kind of narrates and bookends the movie too, doesn't he?
yep,
His narration. It's just
yeah. So he's your typical kind of wise sage character, and I mean, yeah, he's cryptic. We don't learn a lot about him. If they'd done any more, they could have maybe done more with that. I can't get real annoyed at them for not like telling us everything about his backstory and all of that stuff. But it still is kind of, again, awkward and leaves you with a lot of weird questions because it's like the first thing I'd ask him is, hey, how'd you get to where you didn't have to be a Spawn anymore?
yeah. I like when I first watched this movie. My question was like, who is this guy? And
Yeah.
how does he know these things? What is he doing here? What's
And
his
they don't really
motivation
tell you
for doing
much of
these
anything.
things? Yeah.
Yeah.
Why is Spawn
One
continuing
thing
to
I
use
can
guns?
one thing I can say, well, since they're you're playing their game. That's a thing Cagliostro likes to say a lot. So guns are useful. Okay, all right. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Because now Cog is going to tell Spawn how to use his powers, and there's going to be really nothing about. I can't remember if there's much in this movie at all uh, not draining your power too much.
From what I
Although,
remember, there's nothing.
is there nothing?
Yeah.
Wow. There. I'm gonna watch for it while I'm looking at my subtitles here. But yeah, so he doesn't. I don't know. Like in the comics, generally he seems to be able to just use his chains kind of willy nilly, and it doesn't take any power out. Which again kind of begs the question. Okay, well if those are freebie, then why do you need guns? Because they seem to have infinite range,
Yeah.
right?
And he can
I still
take
don't know
bullets.
what the deal is with the spikes. I don't usually say things like this, but given that we're watching this movie, I guess I'll say this. Every time he uses his chains, he looks like he's constipated.
I was thinking the same thing. So the chains in the comics, did they just fly out of his chest too?
They're generally shown kind of more in shadow and stuff, so it's often vague as to where exactly they're coming from. A lot of the time, it's like we have the big cape and stuff, and that kind of secludes exactly where they're coming from.
Oh, okay.
Which looks good. I mean, like they're able to just leave a lot of things up to the imagination, and you don't really need to know exactly what it is. Now, I don't want to give the material too much credit, because a lot of the time they leave things up to the imagination that I need to know. But that's a thing that's kind of okay. Them actually popping out of the his shoulders like that, I don't remember if that happens much in the comics.
So that was just the dumbest thing I've ever seen.
I'm sorry, what's that?
Spawn was just told the guns are useless, learned his powers, walks to a motorcycle strapped with a bandolier and guns, and then goes, I don't need these, and gives him the Cagliostro. Why bring them?
But Cog just told him that they're useless.
He did. But he didn't have them. He shouldn't have even taken them with him in the first place.
In the first place, I know. I don't know why they're there.
So, and
we're
why
not supposed
does he
to
need
ask
a motorcycle?
questions. Just look, Dad. You pop some popcorn, right? Just shut up and shove your mouth full of popcorn and watch this movie. That's
I've
what
already
you're supposed
eaten
to
all
do.
the popcorn because I attempted to not to think through all of this. So like Spawn had his cape earlier that let him just glide around pretty fast, right?
Yeah, but now he's on a motorcycle because we gotta have a motorcycle chase in this movie, Dan.
Oh,
You gotta have that.
okay. And like, how do you not have Spawn's cape when he's riding a motorcycle? Like,
we don't have enough money for that, Dan.
I don't know. That's like if you're riding a motorcycle and you're a superhero that has a cape, you gotta have your cape on because that's when it looks the coolest.
So to be fair, like this wasn't the most expensive superhero movie ever. I mean, it was only $40 million, but I figure you ought to look better than this.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh, there's the cape.
Yep, he pops it out just so that he can do this.
Looks like something out of Alien.
Yeah, it does. Really, necro goo clown? That's what you're gonna say? You're made of the stuff. I don't. I just think that's a weird thing to say. It'd be like if I was gonna spill a bunch of blood on somebody and be like, it's like plasma goo. That's blood, dude.
See, Spawn, if this movie went to the Kids' Choice Awards that year, could have got slammed twice.
That's a really good point you're making. And see, here you go. Like the cape looks kind of okay here. I like that it's waving.
Yeah,
like it's windy.
That's what
stuff.
I want Spawn to look like with the Doctor Strange cape on.
Yeah. Why does he turn it into like this metallic substance?
I don't know.
I don't know. Just so it can be a physical prop. I guess that's good. Anything they can make physical in this movie is a good idea.
And now Clown is blasting off like Team Rocket from the Pokemon anime. Oh man, this just gets better and better, doesn't it?
Dan, like I said, my standards got really lowered while I was reading Spawn because I liked this movie a lot more the last time I watched it because it was easier to follow and felt less convoluted than the comics at the time as I read it or as I watched it. And I'm watching with you, and I feel like I'm making someone else go through Spawn here.
No, like that image right there of Spawn walking away with the ripped cape and everything, like that looked really good. And I think the collar looked like it might have been physical there and wasn't CG'd, but
it kind of did look like that, yeah. Okay, are you ready for this?
Yes.
Because like, as I'm getting older and I'm getting used to like current numbers and things, it's hard to get a sense sometimes of like how to compare things to each other at the time. Okay, so remember I mentioned Jurassic Park?
Yes.
This movie cost $40 million, and you've seen what it looks like.
Yeah.
Jurassic Park was a $63 million movie.
Wow.
They had only $23 million more dollars than this movie. And look at the difference.
Yeah.
It ain't about the money, Dan. Just want to throw that out there. Okay, now I think it's really interesting that we have made this talking head media chick an actual character now.
Yeah.
And we've got her talking to Terry. I actually thought that was kind of neat that they did that. And he's like feeding her information on the news and stuff. That's kind of funny.
That lady is like saying the things more controversial than I've ever seen any news person say on the news ever in the history of ever at the beginning of the movie. So it doesn't surprise me that he picked her to send like evil government information to.
And a lot of the time, the talking media heads, it'll just be like, oh, that's what McFarlane felt about government at the time.
Yeah, exactly.
That gun is preposterous.
It reminds me of Bludnovsky from the Green Hornet movie.
The Green Hornet, yeah, it is kind of like that.
I wish.
Okay, so hold on. So now he's saying the only people that will die are the ones that refuse to join Win. Okay, well, how does that work? How are you going
to accomplish?
I don't know. I'm so confused, Dan. How are you gonna make the virus only affect the people who are not on your side? And at what point are you gonna like make a statement and be like, "Hey, join me"? Like, when does that happen?
Yeah, I mean, he could have a vaccine, but he hasn't made that clear if he has one or not. And
wouldn't it have been kind of cooler if this movie had actually had something to do with the war between heaven and hell, where we actually had, I don't know, the other side? Like,
yeah.
One thing that's got to be weird for people watching this, and this is the only thing they know, is we keep talking about this war between heaven and hell, but all we see is the hell side and then some pedestrians.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, we don't see the other side of the war at all. And so, you know, I guess you're supposed to care about Al Simmons and his kind of personal plight, but when you're talking about a big war that's supposed to be on the horizon, don't you want to see both sides? Don't you want to see the other side of it? I mean, the comics, and I'm not saying this is handled well, but the comics is all about are all about how heaven is just as bad as hell in their tactics. This movie doesn't deal with any of that at all.
No, I mean, we don't even, you know, the closest thing we got to the heaven side was that cameo where Angela looked like a Power Ranger. That was it.
And what was she doing there? She's just walking around that party. As soon as stuff starts happening, she doesn't immediately get in on the action. Really? There's a hell spawn. Your job is to kill them.
Yeah.
You're a hunter.
Yeah, now that you say that, that's probably the worst place they could have had her cameo in the whole movie.
That's the stupidest cameo. They should have just had her walking a dog in the park or something.
Yeah.
Obviously. Something else that this movie does that's irritating, of course, is that it likes to not give the audience any credit and totally insult us a lot by constantly giving us like really quick flashbacks to things and showing us stuff as if like we won't remember the incredibly complex and intricate plot that we're watching. You know, we won't remember anything we've seen so far. It's like, look, Dan, shut up and shove popcorn in your mouth.
So hell can come from anything that's on fire now?
Apparently. And in current Spawn continuity, if you are a creature that is connected to hell, that like you came from hell, you can move anywhere in the world as long as it's in shadow. And so this isn't any stupider than other things I've read.
So that was my first question about how stupid that thing just was. My second question is,
yes.
Wynn was nowhere to be seen in the middle of that room until the fire came out. So either
You're right, he just showed up.
So he either was hiding in the shadows like a weirdo,
for no reason, because we all know he's there. Yeah. Well, I mean, Spawn just showed up, so maybe that's what he was doing.
Or he was in hell.
Shot it. And he wasn't in hell. He definitely wasn't in hell. Because as we'll see in a minute, he's one of the few things in this room right now that did not come from hell.
I mean, I just don't.
Dan, can we just stop watching this and play the Dreamcast game? Can we just play the Spawn Dreamcast game, please?
Sure.
Can we do that?
I've never played that.
Get a Dreamcast, Dan.
Should. I've heard that
should.
I should.
Dreamcast is awesome.
I've only played one like twice.
I will argue with you and say that I do like the charred face makeup.
I don't think it's bad. I'd just rather have him be wearing the mask because he's Spawn. He should be wearing a mask.
Yeah, and then he could just voice over his entire performance.
Yeah, exactly.
Why does Terry Fitzgerald have this giant ball gag?
I don't know. Maybe
It's kind of hilarious. Look at that. It's hilarious.
maybe it's one of Clown's crude jokes again or something.
I guess so. Like, no, it's Spawn. We're supposed to have BDSM imagery in this. It's Spawn. You know? Just
So-
anything that seems like adult and crude and stuff should.
So
Oh, we didn't
when
put all
this
that
lays
all that
on his
stuff.
back and the fire engulfing his entire rear end just goes out immediately.
Well, that's why he stopped, dropped, and rolled. I mean,
he-
to one side. But
He flopped.
yes, he flopped.
Oh, that would look terrible.
Yeah, it wasn't great. Again, when I was a kid, I kind of dug all that, but yeah, watching it now, it's a little tough to look at.
So he was about to punch Jason Wynn with blades pointing away from where he would have punched him. What?
He might have. You don't know that he wasn't going to shoot those spikes out or something.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, now let's look at this. This is ridiculous. So he's going to pull this thing out. And as you watch the way this is edited, this is clearly not what this was intended for at all.
Yeah.
I forget what they said it was supposed to be. I mean, like, again, I don't like to like talk about another commentary while making a commentary. But in the commentary of this movie, the special effects guys and the producers acting almost as if like they're really clever for doing it. Like, this got rewritten somewhat, I think, even kind of after it was shot.
Oh, well, that explains a lot.
So Spawn is like, they had to almost like freeze frame an image to make that work. Like, clearly he on the day, Michael Jai White had no idea that that's what he was supposed to be doing. God. It's weird.
Wanda did a pretty good job of doing the clown mannerisms there.
Yeah, she's not bad. You know, I mean, if you wanted to see that for some reason, yeah. She's doing a great job.
So, the bathrobe just completely changed size.
So in this, he really does turn into other people.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
I guess the idea then, I don't know, man. Maybe this was the first place it happens. I'm thinking back. I don't remember him ever doing that in the comics before this. I could be wrong, but maybe he turns into other things later in the comics because they did it in this movie. I mean, they did that with a lot of stuff. Yeah. They retconned a bunch of stuff to line up with this, and I'm not sure why that was. And importantly, some of the retconning that happened in the comics happened from this same writer who wrote Curse of the Spawn, but I think some of it was at the behest of Todd McFarlane.
So that was Wanda in Hell too, because that giant thing there appeared out of Hell. So Jason, Wynn, Wanda, and Clown all went to Hell off screen.
Yeah, I guess so.
Is Cagliostro a medieval knight in the comics too?
In the comics, Cagliostro is the biblical Cain.
Interesting. That's
yeah. I mean, they never do anything with it, but yep, that's who he is. So he is the first Hellspawn.
That's actually a cool idea. If they did anything with
it's a cool idea. They never did a lot with it. Now, I think here's the thing. Early on, he's called Count Cagliostro, which I think is a lot of the reason they made him a medieval knight in this.
Uh-huh.
And I forget if he was at one point, and then they retconned it, and then he was biblical Cain, or what exactly that was about. I forget. It all kind of runs together eventually.
So what happens when... Is Cagliostro still a Hellspawn, or does he just retain his Hellspawn?
Oh, look at this! Look at this green screen, man. Yeah.
Like, is he?
Your guess is kind of as good as mine there. I think the idea is that he is. Yeah, he kind of retains his powers, but he's broken his connection to Hell. Like he doesn't. he doesn't have to work for Malebolgia anymore, but he still has all of his powers and stuff.
Oh.
I'm not sure why he's able to use them without being sent back to hell or whatever. That's never really mentioned. And the thing is, he leaves and goes and actually rules Malebolgia's section of hell for a long time
Oh.
after Malebolgia gets killed in the comics. And so it's been a long time since I've read Cagliostro stuff, and I'm reaching back trying to remember exactly what was done with all that stuff because it was all really, again, like so much stuff, really convoluted. Spawn is about to do a thing here that's going to make no sense whatsoever.
Oh. Well, that's different.
and that, yeah, but it's notable because it makes I'm gonna go as far as to say it is in the same league and worse than Silver Surfer in Rise of the Silver Surfer being able to beat Galactus when he has a fraction of Galactus's power. This is exactly the same problem, except worse because look how much hell there is and how many of these other hell spawns there are. He's just gonna kind of reach out with his magic and kill everything. I don't know why he has more magic than them. That's a Spawn problem a lot in the comics too. Is that he's like the most powerful thing in the universe for no good reason a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is just like it's a cheap Destiny cop out, Dan. It's always just he was destined to be Spawn and be the most powerful thing in the world. And he's supposed. It's that thing where it's that kind of classic thing of classic in a bad way, like stereotypical thing of like you've got the guy who's part of a prophecy and he's supposed to be they did this in Angel except it was better where like he's supposed to be the linchpin of the apocalypse where like one side's going to beat the other because he's with them and you're supposed to wonder, okay, is he going to side with heaven or hell?
Did you see that scene? I mean, the shot of Bulgy there earlier, where they didn't want to show his mouth not moving, so they zoomed in on his eyes and nostrils. What?
It's ridiculous.
You've already
done it. You've already done it like 3 times in the movie, guys.
Yeah.
Like, what is the point? Okay, so what is he doing right now?
I have no idea.
How is he accomplishing this? So clearly, we're not worried about the clock in this movie.
Apparently,
if you have the power to destroy everything in hell, why do I care?
I don't know.
Right?
So can he kill Malebolgia?
I don't know why he didn't try. Oh, okay. Well, to be fair, he didn't kill all of them. He just killed some of them, and I'm not even sure. Was it just the what did we even watch there? Like was it just like the few that were standing right next to them? I've been asking
myself that question this whole movie, Cap.
Why didn't he shoot up in the like? It would have been cheap, but it was already cheap. Why not just shoot up in the first place and not kill any of them? Like, were they getting really close? Some of the ones he killed looked like they were on floating island things way away from him, right?
Some of them were cheering when their brethren died too. I don't.
I don't know what just happened. Yeah. Well, Dan, if you were hoping that I could clear some of this up for you, I'm sorry if you're disappointed, but
no, I mean, I didn't think you'd be able to, but but like I said, this is making sense than it did the first time I watched it.
And now we've got that generic. Maybe you're the one after all. Like you're the destined chosen one, and so you're able to do all these amazing things, not because of any skill you have or anything you've learned in this movie or any like innate amazing abilities. It's just Malebolgia made you Spawn, and that was a stupid idea because you're destined to defeat the bad guys. And so just like in the comics, he does things without even realizing he's doing them. And that's your Deus Ex Machina, man.
Yeah. I love that because the movie's over. Pretty much Jason Wynn just stopped doing anything. Like he's just sitting there in the corner looking afraid.
Oh, I guess it's all over now. Well, that's why I said I don't think he really knows much about Malebolgia. I mean, I think the idea is supposed to be he had no idea what he was getting himself into. I'm not saying that makes sense. By the way, there's a store, a vintage stock here in town that got some of the old Spawn figures in recently, and they've got the playset of Violator popping out of the wall there. It's a really cool looking playset.
Oh, cool.
And I'm kind of thinking about grabbing that and adding it to my collection.
You should. That would be pretty awesome.
It's like $7. I should probably grab that.
Yeah, that's not bad at all.
Okay, so now he can like extend his mouth so that he can bite people's heads? Well, I guess if he's a shapeshifter, that's all right.
Yeah.
And to answer your question from earlier, I guess the idea with this movie at least is that we're supposed to love Violator as Spawn's arch nemesis, so now we have this big, real climax. Isn't that weird though? Like the thing in hell was just an appetizer, but now we're back in the house, and this is like the real cool ending.
Yeah.
It's like, oh man, we didn't expect anything else to come back out of that fire. It's a fire. Like if hell could just go through whatever fire, Dan. First of all, why don't they just take over Earth right now and kill everyone and get all the souls they want if that's what they're doing? Because they could just, anybody with a fireplace. It's like right after Christmas, man. But like,
Right.
secondly, wouldn't the first thing you do after you got back be to grab a bucket of water and put that fire out?
Yeah, I mean, I guess in this movie's logic, Santa Claus must be from hell because he comes down chimneys, right?
That's right.
Man, this has changed my whole perspective on Christmas now.
Yeah.
So did Clown just die there, or did he just turn to goo and go back to hell for the sequel?
I think he just turned into goo because you hear his voice like kind of fading away as he goes into the fire.
Yeah.
So like, what was the point of all that? Like, who cares? Okay, so he went back to hell. All right. We like there's no reason this couldn't all start again tomorrow. You just find some other idiot like evil government agent guy who doesn't mind getting a thing stuck in his arm. By the way, this is our Sam and Twitch cameo thing here.
Oh, okay. I didn't even realize that.
And too bad we didn't just make them the main characters of this movie.
Agreed.
Because I love Sam and Twitch, and I mean, a lot of the time, yeah, they're kind of pointless stereotypes too, but then they've been written really well, and obviously I love Bendis's book, and there's other people that have written them and done cool things with them, and Sam and Twitch, the writer, was an astounding miniseries that came out a few years back, and so McFarlane lately has been once again touting up, yay, I'm going to make my sequel finally. He's been saying that for 10 years. I'm not holding my breath. He keeps bringing, air quotes, news about this movie out. He's been talking about it a lot more recently, so, like, in the last, year or two, so, like, maybe it's finally going to happen. I think his idea is still do Sam and Twitch and have Spawn completely in the background. It's a horror film. It's not a superhero movie, and Spawn never talks, which all sounds really great. Except he wants to write it, and he's already written it. He's going to write and direct the thing.
Oh God.
That immediately makes me go, yeah, no, I don't want that. I'm sorry, guys. The man can't write.
I would kind of want to see it just to like watching a train wreck, like that.
But see, I don't like, because all he has to do is take that idea, and I'm sure he's got some cool ideas for it. I'm sure he could like tell you what he wants the themes to be and all of that, and the character stuff, and it would all sound really good on paper. This looks really good, by the way.
Yeah.
I love that. Like all this, all of what he wants it to be, and then he writes it, and then he can't communicate anything, and you don't understand what you're looking at. It doesn't make any sense. So just have somebody else write it. Like, even outline it. Say, these are the things I want to be in the movie. Have a competent writer, not somebody like Alan McElroy, who wrote this movie and I think writes just like Todd McFarlane. Or at least a lot
apparently.
like McFarlane. And Reed Curse of the Spawn, and it gets worse. But just find somebody that actually knows how to write. Like, okay, so as I've said before, Todd McFarlane is simultaneously, and I'm not just saying this to be novel, this really is how I feel about it. He is simultaneously my least favorite comic book writer and my very, very favorite comic book artist.
Yeah, McFarlane's one of the greats art-wise. I love his art.
I have a lot of respect for the man in a lot of ways, and then there's a bunch of stuff I don't understand and really bothers me, and he's really weird with business. Real quick, Dan, because I don't know where else I'm going to say this. Maybe someplace else I'll find a place to say this, but there's a thing that I regret not being able to put anywhere in Spawn Year.
What is it?
Todd McFarlane, and I didn't discover this until it was too late, and also within the narrative of Spawn Year, I don't know how I could have put it anywhere, because Captain Spawn just wouldn't have had any way to know about it. But there's a writer. It's I'm trying to remember his name now. It's like Clayton something. In the like issues like 201 to 219. that is allegedly writing Spawn. And it wasn't actually another person. It was Todd McFarlane pretending that he hired somebody else to write his book.
What? Are you serious?
Yeah. No, I'm not even making this up. Somebody wrote it in the comments. Hey, wait a minute. Aren't these guys? Aren't they the same person? Didn't I read that somewhere? I went and looked it up and confirmed it. And I don't know why he did that. And here's the thing. He wasn't even just ghostwriting. He like wrote his own name as additional plot in it. Like he was pretending like he hired somebody else. I think just because numbers weren't great and he thought more people would buy it if they thought somebody else was reading it. And let me tell you, or somebody else was writing it. And let me tell you, that is I gotta look up his name. I can't remember it. But that has got to be. I mean, that has got to be one of the weirdest experiences I've ever had. Because like the whole time I'm writing. I'm writing all these entries about this guy and how he writes and like how he starts off okay and then he starts kind of degenerating into what McFarlane sounds like, and like his first issue was pretty decent, but it was still McFarlane apparently.
Oh my god!
Isn't that bizarre?
That's one of the weirdest things I've ever heard.
I know, it's really weird.
That's like, it's not just weird; it's kind of deceptive, right?
Oh, yeah, man. And it seems like he just does weird stuff like that sometimes. Will Carlton. Will Carlton is not a real person, apparently. Yeah. And I almost put a joke. I ended up not using it for some reason. I almost had a joke in there where I was like, well, we ought to just merge the two guys and call them like Will McFarlton. And it turns out that it really is Will McFarlane. They're the same person. Anyway, I'm sorry. I wanted to throw that out there because I don't know where else I will ever say that. But that's McFarlane's weird business. He will do anything, apparently, in order to try to sell a book that doesn't work on its own merits. Dan, I want to know anything else that you haven't talked about that like you want to say about what it was like watching this and finally seeing this movie.
This may be one of the most incoherent movies I've ever seen. I can't say that I'll be watching this again anytime soon. Some of the visuals in it looked really cool, but I feel like we're beating a dead horse saying that it looked cool in relation to Spawn.
That's Spawn. That's what it has going for it. That's why you look at it.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, McFarlane's one of my favorite artists too, because I know you're a big Venom fan. I'm a big Spider-Man fan. Like, that stuff is classic. He did some things with that character that had never been done before that are kind of staples of the visual of what the character looks like today. So you can't like discount the guy's talent in that regard. It's just, man, I wish he got somebody that was good at writing to do this. I mean, like, that's why I'm interested in the Brian Wood run, but then again, maybe he's just paying Brian Wood to put his name on it. Who knows?
Yeah, and obviously we're dating this commentary a little bit talking about that stuff, but I feel like what kind of bothers me about what I've heard so far in interviews and stuff is that Brian Wood sounds like he's, no offense to Brian Wood, but he sounds like he's sucking up to the boss a little bit in some of the interviews.
Yeah.
Because he's saying things like, in the same sentence, in the same breath, he said, I'm gonna have to like ignore certain things and use certain things, and McFarlane said that before too, and they just use whatever they want to and then pretend like it's always been like that, and it gets really confusing. But he said he's gonna have to do that. At the same time, he also says all the rest of Spawn is a masterpiece.
Oh.
And I don't understand. I don't mean to quote the man out of context. I don't have the article in front of me, but I don't understand that. And so I don't know. I'm a little worried about it because I'm like, McFarlane, just give it to him and work on your Walking Dead action figures and just keep your hands off of it and let him turn Spawn into something cool finally. You know, there was never a point when I was reviewing Spawn where I could not say rarely was there a point where I could not say there's really no point in reading before this, just start here. Like, that happened, I mean, so many places I'm just like, really, you don't need to read before this, just start right here.
See,
You get to issue 200, and it's like, yeah, don't read anything before this. Just start right here.
you think we're ready for a Spawn resurgence? I mean, McFarlane's trying to do the new movie, new creative team on the comic book, and he put out stills from the new animated series. I mean, we could have a Spawn resurgence going on right at the end of Spawn year.
I don't know I don't know what's going on. It's really weird. First of all, all the Spawn news and stuff started happening just as Spawn year was getting going,
hmm
and then now that it's over, like just before it was over, we got all this other stuff started popping up. Like we found out about the whole Al Simmons, like the real Al Simmons, getting sued by McFarlane because he wrote a book where McFarlane thought that he was misrepresenting how important he as a character was to influencing or he as a person was to influencing the actual character of Spawn. So like he got sued, and there's this book we'll never get to read that was apparently really libelish. And actually, from what I've read, I think I'm with McFarlane on it, just from what I've read. But like that, we found out about that during Spawn year. The Angela thing over to Marvel happened during Spawn year. There's all this stuff, and I don't think it means anything. I think it's just a really weird coincidence. But getting right at the tail end of it, and now he's talking about the animated series again. He's talking about the movie and stuff. I don't know why now.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, you said there was a real Al Simmons that is based, like the character's based on. I would not want to be that guy.
Well, not really. I mean, basically, it was just McFarlane, and we didn't talk about this during the movie, but McFarlane named all of his major characters, for the most part, after people he knew personally.
Oh, okay.
And Al Simmons was a roommate of his in college, and then all the way through the '90s, Al Simmons, the real Al Simmons, made his living dressing up in a Spawn suit, and McFarlane sent him all across the country to conventions and things, and he met people with the big cool Spawn mobile car that they made, and he was in costume, and they would do this thing where it was like meet the real Al Simmons. And the only things that McFarlane claims that came from Al Simmons, the real Al Simmons, in creating Spawn, it was that his name is Al Simmons, and B, he's a black man, and that was it.
Uh-huh.
And Simmons wrote this whole book that was supposed to be all about all the parallels between his life and Spawn's. And if only he had made it about that would have been okay. But apparently according to McFarlane anyway, because I obviously haven't gotten to read it, according to McFarlane anyway, he just wrote a lot of things that weren't true.
Oh, okay.
And
Well,
so that's why that all happened. But anyway, I don't know. It's just there's been a lot of interesting news about this character in the last couple of years.
there has been, and it's a character that I've always known about, but never really delved into it. And it's interesting to have vicariously dived into it through you.
Well, here's the thing. I would love to see a Spawn resurgence,
Uh-huh.
because there's so much potential there. There's so much potential in the mythology, in the iconography, in even a lot of characters. Because what's interesting, it's sort of like, I've always said this, but it's sort of like Power Rangers, where like there's a lot of stuff that hasn't been mined yet, where you just look at it and instantly it makes you think of possibilities. And then the actual material never really did anything with the stuff. And so, you look at a character like the Freak, or you look at the Curse, you look at all these different characters, and they're clean slates. You just take the initial idea of the character and what they look like, and go to town and actually give them an ideology and a worldview, and do things with them. And so when I say I'd love to see a Spawn resurgence, I mean I'd love to see talented people take the property, run with it, do stuff. McFarlane, buddy, just let people make money for you, man. I mean, it's your property. You created some great stuff. Let talented people run with it, and then how about you draw it every now and again? Yeah,
That
that'd be
would be
nice.
great.
I
I'd
mean, I love him as an artist, and I feel like in spending all this time writing Spawn, McFarlane has deprived us of a whole bunch of great artwork.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if he'd have enough time to at least do covers if he stopped writing full time.
Well, and he did for a while. And the thing is, he was drawing covers while he was writing, apparently.
Oh, cool.
And he did all those parody covers. They were awesome. Loved every one of them. And he just talks about how much time it takes to do sequential art. He's a businessman. He has all these companies. I get that. But, like, you know, he's just, I'm sorry, he's not a writer.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it would be really cool to see someone come in who was more of like his sensibilities, or like Capullo, a more superhero-y comic book artist, to do new stuff. Because from what you said, Kurdansky, and I've seen his art on that Penguin midi he did when the New 52 started. He's not like that at all. He's more of a horror kind of dude.
Yeah, and I love Kurdansky. But the thing is, he's one of my top 5 favorite artists right now. And it sucks because he's stuck drawing a book that's just boring.
Yeah.
You know, and well, I mean, I guess he's not anymore after this because there's a new creative team, and that means I imagine DC will scoop him up and do something cool with him. I hope, because he's wonderfully talented. He's absolutely fantastic, and I don't know, man. I mean, like right now with that book, you know, just before the new creative team and stuff, what they've been trying to do all this time is just been make it a more kind of understated horror book, but then it's not always that, and it doesn't know what it wants to be, and it's usually just McFarlane uh, kind of fishing around trying to figure out what readers want when he ought to just make what he likes, you know, and then see if people want that. But he brings too much of the business side to it.
Right, exactly.
I'm not saying that there's no room for that at all in the creative side, because, you know, obviously you are creating a product, so you want to find people that actually want the thing. But to every other issue, have a thing in the back of a letters page. I realize I'm just repeating things I've said in Spawn here now, but to like in the back of a letters page every couple issues, be like, okay, what do you guys want more? Do you want like an action driven book, or do you want a dialogue driven book? McFarlane, it's not about the little elements. Just tell a story, and if it's a story that requires a lot of action, tell your story with a bunch of action in it. You know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
But anyway, well, Dan, thanks for being a trooper, man.
No problem. It was actually kind of an enjoyable experience to watch that and kind of just figure out how little sense it made.
Dan, I appreciate you coming up with the silly joke that became my life for 2 years.
You're welcome.
I hope everybody enjoyed the commentary. Dan, thanks again for doing it with me, man.
Oh, no problem.
I'm sorry. I hope I didn't talk over you too much. You kept asking me things. My mind kept running to a bunch of different places.
Oh, you're all set. I mean, I know that you know much more about this than I do. All of the nonsensical things that I noticed in the movie, I got to say. So, it was interesting hearing your insight on some of the things, and because a lot of the times with these comic book movies, it's a problem of like you have this, like the source material's intent isn't being communicated properly, and they're like, oh, because we have this thing in here, like by extension, the source materials is being projected on that, like for you fans, so you're going to get it. Like with Spawn, that doesn't even work. So it was interesting to hear about all that stuff. Like, oh no, like it's trying to communicate something from the comics that doesn't even make sense.
Yeah, a lot of it's interpretation. A lot of it is McElroy, you know, to give him a little bit of credit, on the page had to go, okay, I don't know what this is, so I got to make something up.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like,
well, everybody, thanks again for listening. Sure appreciate you. And Dan and I will see you again soon with more Flash and Star Wars discussions. And Dan, I want to do some more commentaries with you soon. So
let's do it. I want to do a commentary on the 1970s Doctor Strange movie, because that would be awesome.
We should make that happen.
Definitely.
Well, folks, we appreciate you. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Dan.